Great. Well, my name is Donnie Ritzma. I am the Senior Community Development Planner with the Michigan Area Council of Governments, and also with me from MACOG. I'll let them introduce themselves, starting with Zach.
Yeah, hi, I'm Zach Drips. I'm the Deputy Director here with MACOG. And Sophia.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm the new Community Development Planner at MACOG.
And then before we begin the presentation, I also want to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Nicole with Fourth Economy.
Hi, everyone. Nicole Muse-Kilcucky with Fourth Economy.
Great. So before Nicole begins, I wanted to just provide a brief background of how this particular project came about and the purpose for it. Following the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, MACOG was awarded a federal grant from the United States Department of Commerce, the Economic Development Administration. This was made available through the CARES Act. And this award was able to help us increase MACOG's technical capacities to help reach out more in depth into our local communities and economic partners across our region to respond and recover from those impacts that occurred through the COVID-19 pandemic. One of those requirements for that grant award, we had to create a regional disaster recovery and economic resiliency plan. But more importantly, though, before COVID-19 did impact the region, it was a priority in itself through our 5-year EDA comprehensive economic development strategy to explore more opportunities to diversify the region's local industries and create high quality hometowns in the efforts to be more economic resilient and aid with recovery in such a times of stresses and shocks through economic crises. So we heard, following the pandemic, we heard from our local governments and partners that the region really does need to have such a regional plan that specifically addresses recovery and resiliency, and that also it's a national best practice to have more of an actionable plan that mitigates the short and long-term impacts. So following that expressed need, we sought professional guidance through issuing an RFP process back in January 2021. And then we received 9 proposals through that RFP. And ultimately, we decided to select Fourth Economy in March of 2021 to help us lead this process for the development of the Regional Disaster Recovery and Economic Resiliency Plan, and titled here on the screen, Collaborating for Regional Resilience and Economic Growth. So with that, I will turn it over to Nicole, and she's gonna go over the summary of the findings through this planning document, as well as then the action strategies that the region had came up with to enhance resiliency. Nicole?
Great, thanks, Donnie. And hi, everyone. Thanks again for being here. Like Donnie said, we'll go through our slides this afternoon. That really is a kind of high-level overview of the full report, which you can view on MACOG's website. And then we'll save some time at the end in case anyone has questions. So again, this plan is really was motivated to evaluate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the regional economy. The region that MACOG represents is Elkhart, Kosciuszko, Marshall, and St. Joseph counties. And as the planning organization for these 4 counties, MACOG is really eager to be responsive to the needs of all the municipalities that sit within that region, and really wants to make sure that it's able to prepare those municipalities for challenges and stressors that may be outside of our local control. And so what this publication aims to do is to provide a roadmap to policy stakeholders and other stakeholders throughout the region for short-term recovery, but also long-term growth and resilience throughout the region. And so what we did to prepare this report, we formed a steering committee that was made up of local public nonprofit, business, and education leaders throughout the 4-county region. We had about a dozen leaders kind of guide our progress as we developed the scenarios and the strategies that we'll go through later. They were really instrumental to the development of this plan. We also held a number of interviews with local stakeholders to really understand some of the challenges and opportunities that exist in the MACOG region. We also held a series of in-person focus groups in South Bend and Elkhart with local practitioners in areas like childcare, housing, education, healthcare, arts, culture, and recreation, and regional marketing. And so you'll see some input from the interviews, the focus groups, and the steering committee throughout the report. And then finally, we held virtual strategy sessions with key partners that really helped to define the strategies that you'll see at the end of the report. Again, areas for potential collaboration with others that are in the region that are working on some of these key issues. On the right side of the screen, we also did a fair bit of economic and demographic data analysis, which we'll go through in depth today. Hopefully it's not too much information, but we really think it's important to sort of set the scene for, what are the conditions in the region that MACOG and regional stakeholders in the MACOG region are looking to address. In addition to the data analysis, we did a full review of the many plans and reports that organizations in the region have completed over the last several years, just to make sure that we were building from efforts that are currently underway rather than reinventing the wheel. So all of that really informed what you see here today. This is a vision statement that the steering committee members and the planning team helped to develop. And so it's the vision for the MACOG region is that it will be a region of high-performing, inclusive, connected communities that provides residents access to the global innovation economy and is recognized for world-class education and collaborative community partnerships. So this really is the desired future state of the region, according to a lot of, again, those prior plans and input from the steering committee that, really acknowledges, where the region is and its existing strengths, but also is aspirational in terms of where the community wants to be in terms of economic growth into the future. We also developed some driving themes that are really key to the goals that you'll see on the next slide. Those themes are growth and prosperity, so enabling population growth and employment, entrepreneurial opportunities to advance regional prosperity. The second is innovation and adaptiveness, so respecting the region's manufacturing legacy and history, while also recognizing the importance of adapting new technologies and innovations. And then finally, diversity and inclusion, which is about acknowledging the region's growing population diversity and building a welcoming environment where all are empowered to thrive. These themes, again, really are reflected throughout the document and also tie into these three goals. If we had to summarize sort of what the objectives of this plan are and a lot of the economic development work that happens in the region, it's really about these three things. So the first is population growth, and we'll talk about that in the data section. But we want to see population growth in the MACOG region, especially among working age adults. And we want to get there through both talent attraction as well as talent retention. We also want to see higher per capita income, and we think that we can get there through diversified and modernized industries that provide higher paid job opportunities to the residents of the region. And then the third goal is increase small business activity and employment within those small businesses. So all of the strategies that we'll talk about later tie back to one of these three goals. Now we're going to talk about some of the key challenges and opportunities and data that we reviewed as a part of this plan. It'll be summarized in three sections. This first one, business, industry, and entrepreneurship. Next, we'll talk about people, talent, and the workforce. And then finally, we'll talk about place, infrastructure, and the built environment. We feel like those three pillars are really the foundational elements of any strong economy. And so if we dive into this first section, Here's some key findings that we saw as we looked at the conditions in the region. First and foremost, recognizing that there are several industry strengths in the MACOG region. 3 industries in particular: manufacturing, educational services, and healthcare and social assistance, really lead the regional economy, especially when you look at subsectors. Of course, RV manufacturing on the manufacturing side, orthopedics on the healthcare side. In addition to those historic and continued industry strengths, we also see a lot of regional efforts at automation and tech adoption throughout those industries. And so, leaders in the region have been working to modernize key industries. There are some examples: the LIFT network, the industry labs at Notre Dame. These are investments in automation and technology that's really going to help bring these industries into the future, and we want to make sure our workforce is prepared to take advantage of those opportunities. The next set of observations, we took a look at per capita income, which is a good measure of economic prosperity. Unfortunately, we do see low per capita income compared to other regions and the state as a whole. And so you see across the 4 counties of the MACOG region per capita income that are between $4,300 and $8,300 below a national per capita income level. This is really important because it does affect the region's ability to be competitive to other regions in terms of attracting and retaining talent. The second thing on this slide is around industry diversification and makeup. Even pre-pandemic, we saw the MACOG region really heavily reliant on a few industries that are really supply chain vulnerable. And we did see prices rise for key commodities that really affected key industries, like vehicle manufacturing and construction. And so that's something just to keep in mind, that those industries will continue to be vulnerable to those supply chain fluctuations into the future. This slide is really about the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in particular in a specific period of time. So there's a lot on this slide, but I'll just try to hit the highlights and some of the key information. This is really looking at employment, both pre-COVID, so the last full quarter before the COVID pandemic caused a lot of economic shutdown, so the 4th quarter of 2019, and sort of this peak COVID period between the 2nd and 3rd quarter of 2020. And so we saw since that late 2019 quarter, the 4-county region lost over 20,000 jobs. Again, this is compared to 2020 3rd quarter data. So we know that things have changed since then. But we did see some pretty dramatic effects in educational services. One of the top employment sectors lost the biggest amount of employment during that peak period, over 2,000 jobs lost during that time. Manufacturing also experienced a relatively big loss, 1,600 jobs in that same period. Of course, we know accommodation and food service and retail were particularly hit hard nationwide, and that's true here as well. And so this, again, is just something to keep in mind as we emerge from the pandemic and continue to build out economic recovery in the region.
Nicole, if you don't mind a question, what was the source for those employment numbers?
Sure. Let me double check with you and I can get back to you. I know we do a lot of work, and I apologize, it's not on the slide. We do a lot of work through the BLS, the quarterly workforce indicators, and possibly the American Community Survey, but I can check on that and get back to you. I don't have it right in front of me right now. Thanks for the question. We also took a look at employment over time, and this was, something that we took a look at even pre-pandemic. We saw employment in the MACOG region really peak in the third quarter of 2018, and so we've seen a lot of gains in employment in industries like manufacturing, construction, and healthcare. But we did see, a drop of 20,000 jobs since the beginning of the pandemic, but even since that peak in 2018, the region is down 28,500 jobs. And so again, this is something that predates the pandemic and really emphasizes the challenge of the region relying on a few key sectors. The last factor that we looked at on the business industry side was startups and small businesses. And so one thing to note is low employment in the region at startups and young firms. So again, this chart, you can see national rates in blue, Indiana rates in yellow, and the MACOG regional rate in red. And MACOG, the MACOG region, follows national and statewide trends pretty closely. We see declining new business entry rates since the 1980s. This chart goes all the way back to 1978 through 2018. So that's true at the nationwide level as well as the state level, but we still see lower business establishment rates in the MACOG region than we do in those two comparable regions. So today, or when this data was last recorded in 2018, the MACOG region has 6.7% of its workforce employed in firms 5 years old or younger, compared to 7.6 in Indiana. And so there's a range throughout the 4-county region, but we know that startups and new businesses are responsible for most net new job creation within a regional economy. So that's one indicator to watch and also potentially try to influence in terms of maximizing job creation in the region. So now we're going to take a look at people, talent, and workforce. And the first component that we noted is really the asset of where the region is located. And so this is a region that's really centrally located. It's in close proximity to several major markets, including Chicago, Indianapolis, Detroit, Columbus. Several major highways across the region are easily accessible. The South Bend International Airport makes travel really easy for both, visitors as well as businesses. The railroad is an important asset as well. And so this is something that, really makes the region competitive for businesses and employees that are looking for easy access to other areas of the country within a low-cost living region that we see in the MACOG region. The second thing that we see, of course, is strong educational institutions and workforce development programs. The region is really rich in educational institutions. They're all listed there on the right-hand side. We know that these institutions of higher ed are producing 6,600 degree awards annually. Of course, as we'll see later on, not all of these degree holders stay in the region, and that's part of what we'd like to see. But nevertheless, these institutions are really key in terms of preparing the workforce for emerging opportunities. So as I alluded to, we do see some out-migration and brain drain as a particular challenge in the MACOG region. So we see a net migration rate of 2.4%. So that's 2.4% that are leaving the region. We see we're projected to lose about 10,000 people to outmigration by 2030. And these are, a lot of these folks that are leaving are those college and university students who are graduating with, higher degrees, certificates, and other marketable skills. We also see that sort of compounded with lagging population growth and an aging population. So on the right-hand side of the screen, these are the median ages in the 4 counties. We can see between 2010 and 2019, those median ages are increasing. And so, we see a higher percentage of the workforce, nearing retirement age than we used to. And a lot of these retiring workers are employed in skilled trades in the manufacturing sector and others. And so a lot of business leaders are really worried that those skills may be lost as younger generations decline to pursue positions within these career paths. And so that's something that, again, is important when we think about the dynamics of the region. We also see a lagging population growth. So we did see Indiana's population increase 10% between 2000 and 2019, but the MACOG region grew by only by less than 6% during that same period. Again, it ranges throughout the region. We saw a 2% growth rate in St. Joseph County, 12% in Elkhart County. So Elkhart County is growing faster than the state of Indiana, but that's the only of the 4 counties where that's true. And so what this equates to is about a 0.02% annual growth rate across the MACOG region over that 20-year period. And then we also made note of regional efforts at combating a lot of these demographic challenges. So we see a lot of efforts at branding, talent attraction, and talent retention, really, geared at combating outmigration and brain drain, also attracting new residents, perhaps return residents who have left the region for college or for an early career that may be looking to return and reestablish themselves in the region, particularly looking at the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership's recent launch of the We+U branding campaign, which really highlights the assets of the region and does a great job of marketing them to an external audience. This last section is all about place infrastructure and the built environment. And so there are a couple of key components that are important to economic growth that we took a look at. The first one being transit, which is an important component of a high functioning workforce system. Again, the presence of a good transportation network can ensure that people can easily reach their jobs, schools, and other amenities. In the MACOG region, we see transportation costs for moderate income earners that range from 22 to 37% of income. This is something, again, that is is good to monitor over time. We do see improvements in projects like the South Shore Rail Line expansion project, which broke ground in late 2020. This is, improving transportation for commuters and folks that are going to school. And so that is the type of enhancement that will, reduce some of those cost pressures for a lot of folks living in the region. The next factor that we looked at in this category was childcare. And so childcare availability and affordability really affects the labor force's ability to work and can contribute to a decline in labor force participation over time. We see a lot of working parents that have been forced out of the workforce in recent years, exacerbated during the pandemic. But this has really affected and made worse a labor shortage that a lot of employers are are citing today. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see sort of the capacity of existing childcare centers in the 4 counties, as well as the region, and the slots per 100 children in the region between the under the age of 5. And so we know that existing capacity is not enough to cover current demand. The region is technically, and the state is as well, technically what we call a childcare desert, which means that there's fewer than 1 childcare spot for every 3 children under the age of 5. So this will be another key thing to look at in the region. The next piece that we looked at is housing. And so housing, of course, is a key component of making sure that the region's attractive to talent, ensuring that the housing stock is sufficient for current and growing populations. So on the one hand, we see good news in that only 23% of households in the region are cost burdened, which means they're paying over 1/3 of their income on housing costs. This is lower than the national rate of 32%, but we also see rising housing costs that are increasing faster than wages are growing. And so that is a factor that we expect to see compound over time. Regional wages are increasing 3% per year, while home values are growing 12 to 18%, depending on the specific locality. Rents are rising 10 to 16% in the region. And then finally, broadband, which is another key amenity and asset in the region. High-speed internet access is really crucial for residents and businesses. People increasingly rely on online services for things like remote work and school, and even virtual home healthcare visits. So this is an investment that's really important to the region. We see a lot of really strong fiber networks in St. Joseph County, as well as smaller networks in Marshall and Elkhart counties. But we know a lot of the rural areas of the 4 counties still do not have access to that same level of broadband. The MACOG team recently conducted a broadband study with Purdue, which assesses the current supply and demand, and that study is available on MACOG's website. So next, we're going to talk about 3 scenarios that we took a look at. We wanted to be able to really project what the region might experience under certain conditions in order to sort of be able to predict what certain interventions might bring to the region in terms of changes related to challenges and opportunities, and also guide strategy development to push the MACOG region in the direction of meeting its goals. And so we'll look at these in terms of what these scenarios look like and also what they mean for the region. And then after that, we will look at the strategies that were developed. So there are 3 strategies. The first strategy is what we're calling the status quo scenario. This scenario is essentially the scenario that happens if no actions are taken and we sort of just keep going at the pace that we're at currently. This assumes that no actions are taken to mitigate the current challenges that we see. We see the current population and demographic trends continue without changing over time. And so a few key things that we would expect to see under this scenario, assuming the current annual growth rate, population rate, which as stated before is 0.02% positive growth, we would expect to see the region's population grow by just over 10,000 people over the next 10 years. I'm just noticing the labels at the bottom of the map should say 2020 over to the left-hand side and 2030 all the way over to the right. So we would expect to see an increase in the regional population from just over 604,000 in 2020 to about 615,000 in 2030. But as this projection sort of indicates, most of that growth would be concentrated in adults over the age of 65. We would expect to see the number of working age adults and those under 24 years declining as births and in-migration are not able to keep pace with the current rate of aging and out-migration. And so this is just sort of following current trends, expecting them to continue. This is what we would anticipate seeing. This scenario, of course, really means that, you know, fewer working age residents in the region will sort of exacerbate that trend of employers finding it difficult to bring in, you know, workers that are qualified. Regional job growth would be limited. And as we see a larger senior population, we see more people on fixed incomes that constricts economic growth and affects goals like increasing per capita income. And so that is scenario one. Scenario two is more optimistic. This is our people first scenario. This assumes that talent attraction accelerates and in-migration goals are met. And so what we see during this, in this scenario is that economic recovery happens and following those pre-pandemic levels. If we assume that pre-pandemic job growth levels continue, we would expect to see an additional 43,000 jobs by 2030. In order to have enough workers of prime working age to fill those jobs, the region would need to grow 75,000 more people than is projected currently. That's to account for people under the age of 18 and people that are of retirement age or older. And so this is, you know, a scenario where we would see, you know, new people entering the region, new ideas, new skills, a rising rate of entrepreneurship, and of course, employment within high growth, high wage industries increasing as talent is attracted to the region. New companies are attracted as well and create new opportunities for both new and existing employers. Investments in childcare and housing and transportation would be needed under these conditions to account for the added population growth that we would expect to see in this scenario. The third and final scenario is our jobs, what we call our jobs first scenario. This is really focusing on attracting new, diversified, high wage employers to the region. We would expect to see existing employers expanding, startups growing, leading to increased per capita income region-wide. This would, of course, create more demand for skills training in growing technology-driven fields. This is, you know, again, would create more demand for skills training in these growing fields. In order to reach Indiana's per capita income that is really closely linked to this scenario, there's sort of three strategies that would need to sort of happen at the same time. The first would be to add jobs in high-paying categories like healthcare practitioners and management. The second would be to transition workers that are currently earning lower wages at lower paying jobs into those that pay higher wages through upskilling, especially in fields like manufacturing, which are modernizing and and adopting new technologies. And then finally, raising wages across wage categories in order to bump up those in the region that earn less than a wage threshold, which is $37,000 a year. And so these are in industries like transportation and warehousing and food service. And so all of these things are sort of part of a strategy to match state level per capita income and raise low wage earners up into those higher wage earning categories. And this is our last section, and then we can jump into some questions if folks have other questions for us. These are our strategies that, again, are really meant to tackle some of the trends that we've been looking at, some of those economic conditions, and push the region closer to its long-term vision. These were really developed through conversations with stakeholders in the region. Again, those steering committee members, the individuals who participated in the focus groups and the strategy sections. And many of the people who participated really work on these issues in their day-to-day work. They have on-the-ground knowledge about what's needed in order to move the needle towards our regional goals. One final thing to say about these before we jump in is that this is a plan. It's a regional plan. MACOG produced it, but this is really meant to get at the region's overall economic recovery goals. And so these strategies really reflect a lot of the priorities that a lot of regional stakeholders have. A lot of organizations are working towards these goals already. And so you'll see a discussion about collaboration and partnership in the full document, where we see that it's important for MACOG and other stakeholders in the region to work together to amplify work that's happening in these areas. And so we have a number of goals in that first category of place infrastructure and the built environment. The first is around supporting local vibrancy and connectivity efforts. MACOG regularly assists local municipalities with comprehensive planning, and a lot of municipalities throughout the region are really looking to build more vibrant public spaces, amplify their existing cultural amenities, add new outdoor recreational opportunities, and really build transportation solutions that can help connect residents living in that area to those assets. And so that's something that MACOG currently does that should be continued in order to create vibrancy throughout the region. The second strategy is to promote broadband access across the region. Again, with the recent broadband study, MACOG has a role to play in terms of providing data that supports broadband connectivity through the municipalities that exist throughout the region. And then finally, on housing, so the providing regional housing development resources, there's sort of three strategies here. The first is to develop financial and other resource programs for both private developers and also local municipalities as they're looking to introduce new housing solutions into their communities. MACOG currently works with regional partners throughout the region that are working on innovative solutions like land banking and parcel inventories. And so that's something that should continue to happen, is to create and support those efforts throughout the region. And then finally, helping municipalities highlight housing issues that are local to their communities through data, storytelling, through planning and housing study efforts. So we know that the housing market is not a single housing market. It, of course, varies throughout the 4-county region. And so MACOG has a role to play in terms of helping those localities really tell their unique story. The next strategy area is around people, talent, and workforce. The first section is around childcare and really promoting childcare access as a component of economic development. The first strategy here is communicating the value and ROI of childcare investments on a regional scale through data and mapping. There's a lot of local organizations that are currently working to map the capacity of childcare providers in the region. MACOG can help augment this by looking at things like transportation and communicating those findings to employers and the region as a whole. The second strategy is around publishing information about incentives and what's available to employers that are looking to support childcare solutions for their employees. As a regional organization, having that voice to be able to reach to those regional employers is a key and critical role. And then finally, helping local municipalities craft and promote policies that could be beneficial to childcare efforts while doing planning, things like zoning changes to allow for home-based care to be certified and licensed can go a long way in local municipalities throughout the region. On the right side of the screen, the next strategy is connecting the region to workforce training resources. Again, there are a lot of organizations and educational institutions, training institutions that do a great job of helping residents modernize and adapt to growing demands in changing industries. So really helping to align available job openings with job seeker skill development. And as the regional economic development district with the EDA, MACOG can help support a lot of these organizations in bringing in workforce development dollars and really acting as a conduit to access federal and state resources that can help those organizations meet their goals. And then finally, support marketing for talent attraction, again, working with partners like the South Bend Elkhart Partnership to amplify the marketing messages that are being pushed out on a regional scale, can help the region to really kind of take those messages and amplify them by working together to promote those. I like the thumbs up, Dan, thank you. Finally, this is our last strategy slide. This is the strategies that have to do with business, industry, and entrepreneurship. The first one is around Main Street entrepreneurship. Again, really recognizing the importance of small businesses in our Main Street communities, in our local municipalities. Again, MACOG works with a lot of our local towns on local planning efforts, and so is really in a good position to introduce best practices and identify funding opportunities that can be put towards Main Street development planning, best practices, and those sorts of resources. The second strategy is to create a forum where needed to convene small town chambers and Main Street organizations. We see a lot of the larger chambers and Main Street organizations, routinely getting together to network and come up with solutions together. But there are a lot of small chambers and Main Street organizations that are not connected into networks like this. So potentially providing a forum and a space for those organizations to get together and do some problem solving and peer learning. And then finally, creating a small business dashboard, resource map, and storyboard that can be available on a central place like MACOG's website. We know that there are a lot of resources for Main Street businesses and micro businesses. We see a really well built out support network for innovation-based startups, but we know that Main Street businesses need that same type of network support, especially given that small businesses were those hit hardest by the pandemic. So there's currently no central point of contact for small businesses. And so this can be a good strategy to focus around to support those businesses in our communities. The last section is around supporting the region's industry modernization and supply chain efforts. So again, continuing to help regional partners identify and solicit federal and state funding to support the region's efforts at industry modernization, and then also publishing supply chain and cluster analysis data that can be used in a lot of these federal and state funding applications. That's a role that I think MACOG is well positioned to play, given its experience publishing data at a regional scale for a lot of these different purposes. This is our last slide. Just a note on implementation of all of these strategies. Again, we know that this is has to be a regional effort to be successful. And in the report, you'll see MACOG sort of positioned in a number of different ways depending on the strategy. So in some cases, MACOG can be a convener or a leader of strategies. In others, MACOG can play a supporting role in the case where other organizations are playing a leading role. And so it's important that MACOG and other regional organizations are flexible and open to working together to be collaborative in pursuing a lot of these goals. And with that, I think we are done with our presentation. I know that was a lot, but we wanted to turn it over to you guys to see if you have any questions. And while we're looking at that, I know there was some things that came through on the chat that I was not able to read while I was talking. And I also wanted to take a look and try to find that data source for that question about the data that we looked at. So I'll pause there and see if anybody has any questions.
Nicole, this is Jim Baxter from the United Way in South Bend. You say you did focus groups only in South Bend and Elkhart?
Yes, we did.
Was there a reason for excluding the other two?
There wasn't. The reason was that we had space available. We held it at the community center in Elkhart, the aquatic center,
Sure.
And at the partnerships offices in South Bend. We figured those were kind of central meeting places. And we did get some participation. Folks did travel across the region to attend those. It would have been nice to be able to hold sessions in all 4 counties, but just logistically, I think it worked out well to have those in those 2 locations.
Yeah,
And
Jim.
since you've got the data from all 4 anyway, I noticed you always included that.
Yeah, and Jim, as Nicole said, we did get participants from all across the county. So those focus groups, like, they were focusing on like housing or childcare or talent retention, and we had representatives probably in nearly every meeting from all 4 counties. And so we definitely took an effort to do that. But like Nicole said, just more meeting logistics wise, it worked out better to be in those 2.
During COVID, I presume, or the end of COVID, maybe.
Yeah, it was right near the end there. Yeah, exactly. We needed some good open spaces and places that were available. So yeah, thank you for your question.
Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, those meetings also were available by Zoom too. So if anyone who wasn't able to attend in person was able to join online.
We did. Yeah, that's right.
Hi, Lisa Harmon from Livewell Kosciuszko in Kosciuszko County. Just a quick question about, knowing that our population is aging and, the cost of healthcare due to our state's poor health outcomes. Are there any kind of strategies that we might be thinking about to consider health and well-being really as a component of workforce development and economic development?
Yeah, Lisa, that's a great question, and it's really complex. I'll just start by mentioning that, definitely recognizing, as you mentioned, the aging population and, health outcomes that are experienced statewide as well as in the region. We've seen healthcare as an industry continuing to grow. That's still the case. There's a lot of opportunities, I think, for workforce development to bring new people into that field. As the region ages, we know there's going to be a need for more home health care and more senior living facilities that have that healthcare component included. So that's going to continue to be, I think, something that's, you know, both a challenge and an opportunity. I will say when we held our healthcare and our education focus groups, we talked a lot about those sectors in particular, and you know, the stress that professionals in both the healthcare and the industry are under, you know, not just because of the pandemic, but that certainly exacerbated it. So we talked at length about opportunities for, you know, plugging into some of the regional efforts at marketing and messaging to use those platforms for things like community-wide public health awareness or strategies, pointing people to resources that exist in the 4-county region for things like, you know, mental health services and burnout and other services that might be needed. So that was definitely a part of the conversation, you know, and it's a good thing to keep in mind for economic development. It's definitely something that affects you know, people's ability to work and you know, be productive when it comes to economic development. So you know, it's definitely something that's really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know, you know, when I'm talking with employers, you know, some of the things that we talk about is the fact that healthcare costs, you know, in or, you know, in our region, in Indiana, you know, are so high that, you know, what are things that we can do? Because people, you know, businesses and industries are saying that when they look at Indiana, they look at those healthcare costs. And so, yeah, what are some things that we can do to make sure that, you know, the health and well-being of all of our employees is hopefully improving?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Lisa.
If I could follow up on her comment, my name is Allison Myers, and I live in South Bend, Indiana, and I moved from Wisconsin, and I've lived in a couple other states and a lot of college towns. And one thing that even our, you know, bigger cities seem to be lacking is the ability to bike comfortably and use other types of alternative transportation to kind of just live your life. So the region has been, you know, about 20 years behind in terms of getting recreational trails, and we're there, but we do not have the infrastructure and the local economy.
Allison.
Set up for walkable cities. And that's going to continue to have an impact on health, you know, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That?
We're experiencing a lag on your end, and so you cut off a little bit, but I think we got the gist of what you were saying around walkability and bike infrastructure and other assets like that. So I think we captured what your comment was about. But I don't know if maybe Zach or Donnie or Sophia, you want to touch on that. I know that that's a big component of planning that you all are involved in.
Yeah, and thanks, Allison. Again, I think your comment is very fair about our region and our efforts kind of maybe lagging across from the country. And it's something that we've definitely trying to work on ramping that up and trying to get more into meeting those needs now. If you've seen any of our recent news, we did just recently hire a new bike or a new active transportation planner. And that's something that he's really focusing on, is trying to focus a little more on those more commuting style biking and how we can improve that, and working with more locally or more closely with the local government as well as the activists groups and on that. So I think your comment's very fair, and we definitely see that as part of our quality of life and economic development strategy, as well as a big piece of that talent attraction and retention to make sure we're getting quality people come here, as well as retaining that young talent that's being educated here. So it's a big focus for sure on something that we recognize as a challenge that we're continuing to look at ways to improve that.
it also affects people's health and well-being overall. So it's an
Exactly.
important strategy in that area too.
So this is Dan at the partnership. I just want to, I guess, kind of make sure I come out with an understanding of next steps. And, you know, there are a lot of great recommendations here, but it's kind of boiling the ocean, right? So are we in a process of narrowing in? You know, I've got my favorites, you've got yours.
Yeah.
What do we do next?
Yeah, I think Nicole, I can take this as well. Again, yes, Dan, you're right. This was a lot of different strategies. We were trying to, again, tackling a lot of different areas. So the next steps for us at MACOG is working with our steering committee that was formed in this process, particularly, but also other of our partners and focus groups. We're going to be talking about how to continue some of those conversations forward, and then working through prioritizing these strategies. Sophia is on our call today, and she was as part of this effort. As Donnie had mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, part of our funding we received for EDA for this plan was also to increase our technical capacity, and Sophia is one of those results of that. And so she's going to be closely working with our partners with the listed strategies in this plan to begin identifying those priorities and how we go forward. For example, it's something we've been working on most recently is the Main Street communities and working on some of those capacity buildings in our small towns. Again, recognizing the fact that, as Nicole brought up, the need for new businesses and new opportunity growth. It isn't just only in the tech field, as we might often think, or that industrial field, but we're also looking at other establishments, and that's where the Main Streets come in. And so that's just as one example, something we're currently working towards. But we wanted to get through this plan process and this adoption here as that kind of big milestone, and then we'll be next organizing some more of those ongoing conversations to talk about prioritization.
Great, thanks, Zach. And this is awesome work. And I just wanted to pick out one little piece and just note that supply chain is one that, you know, I'm hearing over and over when I go out to my local businesses and so on. And it's something that we, with your partnership, want to attack. We've got one of our subcommittee meetings in our group coming up, and I know James is invited, but I just want to throw out there, if you want me to include any of the rest of your MACOG team in those supply chain discussions, please just shoot me a quick note.
Yeah, I will. And that does part of that conversation is we are at MACOG working on a regional freight plan right now, or that have that ongoing as well. And that's kind of, again, part of that discussion of where are those freight needs coming in and out? Where's our goods coming from, and how can we improve that supply, that flow of materials and supplies to our region? It's definitely part of that conversation. So yeah, I'll reach out to you and talk with James about continuing that conversation.
That's great. And that's the type of collaboration, I think, and partnership that this plan was really trying to highlight and emphasize. So thanks for raising that, Dan. I know that there's a lot of partners that were involved in the creation of this plan that are eager to follow up with next steps and kind of, you know, start that partnership and collaboration to achieve some of the goals that are outlined here. So thank you for mentioning that and for being here. Any other thoughts or questions? I think if that's it for now, maybe I'll turn it back over to Donnie to close us out.
Great. Thanks everyone again for sharing your input. I think this was a really great session, and thank you again for Nicole for leading this presentation. So as we mentioned, we'll be convening with our steering committee and focus group members to organize next steps to collaborate on how we're going to prioritize implementing these strategies. And with that, as Zach mentioned earlier in the presentation, we will be publishing this recording and the slide deck on our website on our economic development recovery page in the section for our resiliency plan. So be looking for that. And with that, I want to thank everyone again and hope everyone enjoys the rest of their evening. And Zach, if you have anything else to close.
Yeah, just a last item again. We're still accepting public comments through the end of this month. So again, after today's meeting or after you maybe re-review the document, if you have any other comments, please feel free to send those in. And then this is going to our board for approval in this next month in April. So just keep that in mind.
Is there a link, or I may have missed it, so forgive me.
No.
Is there something we can share?
Yeah, let me.
that I may have
I'll
missed?
share it in the chat box right now.
All right, sorry if I missed it. Thank you.
Yeah. So if you go to this website, it's macog.com/recovery, and you'll on that page you'll see some of our efforts. So it has this plan as well as it has the Indiana Ready information, which I know you're familiar with, but Nicole's group, the Fourth Economy, did help with that plan as well. And it was kind of a cooperative process. So you can kind of learn a little more about that process there as well. But on that page, you'll be able to find the draft plan and comment form, and then we'll be posting this presentation there as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Thanks,
Again,
everybody.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.